Trinidad may be something relative to Trinidad. Prime Minister of the UK may see something that's relevant to this country. And so if you can help our leaders with something like this, given them options at the end, look, here's 25 recommendations that are worthwhile pursuing. They'll be related to education, they'll be related to migration patterns, they'll be related to a whole host of things, I'm sure. If leaders can go away with something, that to me is once again expressing a view of how the Commonwealth can help in these circumstances. So when we are able to do things like that, that to me is a measure of the relevance. You're dealing with issues that are relevant today. You're not wasting time trying to do things that the World Bank or the UN or the Asian Development Bank does a lot better. You're doing things that are relevant to your own organisation and have a measure of credibility about them. If they're relevant but not credible, forget it. If they're not relevant and credible, forget about it. They've got to be relevant and they've got to be credible. And so we continue to sell ourselves. I suppose there's another area that is worthwhile mentioning because it does show a side of the Commonwealth that again we are unique, and that is civil society. I was having a meeting in Paris a few years ago with the then Secretary General of La Francophonie, who was Dr. Boutros Ghali. You may remember him when he was Secretary General of the United Nations, and after that he then became Secretary General of La Francophonie. And La Francophonie is quite a different organisation. We sometimes looked in as a sort of first cousins, or brother and sister or something like that, but essentially they began as a linguistic cultural organisation. Anyway, they were quite determined that La Francophonie should get involved in governments and things like that. And we have regular once a year meetings with them, and we do talk about all those sort of things. But the question he posed to me was, well, how did the Commonwealth develop its civil society organisations? And I thought about that, and I thought, really, I've never been asked this question before. But the fact is, you cannot do it overnight. Because Commonwealth civil society organisations, the first one began in 1901. And then slowly over the years, these organisations just kind of developed. We've got about 86 of them, all whose name includes the word Commonwealth. They don't have any responsibility to me. My only responsibility is I'm supposed to go through and accredit them all, and once they're accredited, they're probably accredited forever. They are a huge mixture of organisations. Probably the best known to you folk would be the Commonwealth Games Federation. And then there's the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, 17,000 members of Parliament around the Commonwealth, whose conference I went to in India last week. Commonwealth Magistrates and Judges, Commonwealth Engineers, Commonwealth Architects, Commonwealth Nurses. We have 7 different Commonwealth organisations relating to media, Commonwealth Press Union, Commonwealth Journalist Union, and so on. And when you put them all together, you do have this enormous breadth and depth of civil society who believe in the concept of the Commonwealth being an entity that can do things for the good. And for me, as Secretary General, Chief Executive of the Secretariat, this is a wonderful thing. Because I want to help our sports ministers initiate some programs. We can talk to the Commonwealth Games Federation. If the President of Gambia says to me, can you provide some judges? I've got a huge backlog of court cases. We can go to the Commonwealth Magistrates and Judges, and they'll provide 4 or 5 judges who will deal with that sort of thing. If we want to deal with teachers, we've had a huge debate throughout the Commonwealth on the loss of teachers from developing countries to places like this, the developed countries, and my own country. How do you manage that sort of thing? And so with our Commonwealth civil society teaching organisations, we were able to develop a protocol which says if a developed country is going to try and take teachers from a developing country, you should follow the following procedures. And we did the same for nurses, because nurses are also one of those groups that gets raided in developing countries and brought to developed countries. Now, those were two initiatives that we were able to develop within our system with the help of our civil society. And now the ILO, the International Labour Organization, has also decided to adopt that same protocol to make it entirely global. So you see, starting from a clear problem within the Commonwealth, nurses being raided out of Jamaica or out of Samoa or out of anywhere else and brought to Australia or brought to the United Kingdom or brought anywhere else, you can see real problems emerge. You can't stop people going from country to country, but when there's an active recruitment program, you can see where you get into real problems. So that civil society within the Commonwealth is something very special to us, something that we really do value, but also it's probably little known, because if you happen to belong to the Commonwealth Stamp Collecting Society, you're probably unaware of what's outside of that. Last year when I was in Canada, I met the Secretary of the Commonwealth Association of Museums. I was quite keen to meet this person because I did have a concern about Commonwealth organisations that were one person and a word processor, usually conveying themselves as a very large pressure group. But she was just the secretary of a group of people, curators of museums, who had come together for some purpose or not, I have no idea why, and they kept each other in communication and shared secrets and all the rest of it. And I thought, well, fine, that's them, you know, we don't expect anything from them, but I do know that if I want to talk to a group of people associated with museums, there's a good starting point. And the other, probably the last point I should make to you, is where we fit in with others. As I said, as an international organisation, this is our spectrum area, this is what we believe and this is what we work to, this is what we're trying to achieve. But wherever you are working internationally, you are bumping into other international organisations, no matter what you're doing. And so therefore, for my purposes, it's very important that you have good relations with other organisations, beginning with the UN, with the World Bank, with the IMF, with the African Development Bank, the Asian Development Bank, the Pacific Island Forum, the African Union, the Organisation of American States, the CARICOM states. We are all actually doing pretty much, we overlap a lot. We're all sort of pursuing a similar objective of enhanced democracy, but yet development. Ensure that you're getting economic development. And so, by working with the UN and UNDP, the UN Development Programme, we were able to initiate a series of programs in Swaziland which resulted in them getting a whole new constitution last year. Now there's a country ruled by a king who you probably know has many wives and still keeps collecting many wives, ruled by decree, wiped out their constitution 30 years ago, and was clearly having a lot of agitation internally. We were able to convince them that this was time to make some changes.